Rewind to 2020. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and I've never been so bored in my entire life. I'm not exactly sure where the urge to plant something, anything, came from, but I had some tomato seeds. I stuck them in some soil, and I thought, let's see if they'll grow. And they sprouted. And I thought, okay, here's something to do. Here's a process to begin. I thought, okay, let's start a garden. So after my apparent success with the tomatoes, they were sprouting in quite a promising manner, I moved on to chilies. I had some Scotch bonnet seeds and also some seeds from Nigerian tatache, which I would describe more like a spicy paprika or a spicy capsicum. They're a lot less sweet and a lot less fleshy than the sort of conventional Western bell pepper. I also planted some cucumber seeds. And look, spoiler alert, they did not go anywhere. They did not grow past their initial seed leaves. I think honestly that I may have pulled them out by mistake as weeds. But yes, they were dead in the water before they started. Look, I regret to inform you that I do not know what I'm doing. I did not know what I was doing. It was all about trial and error and experimentation. It was all about just embracing the process and seeing what would come out of it. Now, some of these did not grow very well at all, but some did. At this point, I became seriously emboldened. I was so excited. We got our hands on some aubergines the other day, and I pulled the seeds out of them and stuck them straight in the soil, along with a really particularly mature pepper I already had. But I thought, you know what, there's room in this milk box that I put some soil in. Let's see if it grows. So, my aubergines, or my eggplants, whatever you call them, they exploded. There were so many of them, those seeds were a lot hardier than I thought that they would be. So I decided to space them out and give them a fighting chance in their own boxes. Meanwhile, it was about time that some of those really mature peppers made their way into the ground. I read somewhere that nightshades like calcium, and in our house, we're not working with fantastic soil. Our area is very clay heavy, as you can see. So I put together some eggshells that I'd been collecting over a couple of days, and I ground them into a fine dust in a blender. We had an existing veggie patch, mostly for little vegetables, lemongrass, and other herbs that my mom likes. But then we decided to create another patch for my experiments. So, my first task was to shovel out some of the dust and debris that we had from some recent construction that happened at our house. We had sort of bits of cement and crumbled up building blocks that we needed to get rid of. And then after that, we sort of tilled up the soil so that we could add new layers of fresh, nutritious loam and compost. With some help from my family, I put down a layer of loam, a layer of compost, another layer of loam, another layer of compost, a good heavy layer of that fine eggshell dust that I'd previously made, and finally one last layer of loam to sort of sandwich it all together and create a nice base for my plant's roots to burrow into. Looking back on this, I realized how unprepared I was for all this. I didn't have the right tools. I hadn't done an extensive amount of research. I was sort of improvising and going along with the flow, you know, picking myself up when I had a setback, like with when I realized that I had picked out my cucumber seedlings by mistake. Just sort of adapting when I realized that, oh shoot, I think I may have left my pepper seedlings for too long. I was just sort of playing it as it lay, just going with it and seeing what would come out. On this particular evening, I decided that it was time for all of those seedlings to make their permanent home into the ground, and come what may, we would see how they went. I also tried to give these miserable looking tomato seedlings some life, but spoiler alert, they did not make it either, nor did they fruit or even grow to flowering stage, sadly, but it is what it is. But on this evening, I stayed up late and I sent all those seedlings into the ground, and I began to wait. After the harmattan of December and the dry months of January, February, when the rains came, they came with a vengeance, the smell of ozone in the air, vivid lightning shows, the sound of storming and rain, and in the morning, the crispest, cleanest air that I've ever smelled. The rain came, and these plants no longer needed me to water them vigorously every single morning. The rain came, and they embraced the influx of moisture. I feel like I woke up from a dream one morning and went to my patch and saw that suddenly there were fruit to harvest. In fact, I think I let some of them stay on the branch for too long and their seeds got really hard and mature, but I don't know. I was just so excited to have something to harvest. So excited to bring those shears out and cut something up and think, ooh, what can I make with this? The kitchen is one of the largest collective rooms in my house, and I often cooked to the chatter, comedy, and commentary of my family members, sort of milling in and out of the kitchen at different times of the day, depending on their purposes. Whenever I tuned out the noise and chatter and fell into my own thoughts a little bit as I settled into the meditative movements of chopping and de-seeding and frying and seasoning, I was thinking a lot about how much of an honor it was to steward a process such as this. I wasn't its creator. Nature did its own thing. What I was there for was to provide a safe place for the seedlings to grow unencumbered by weeds. What I was there for was as an instrument to place their roots deep into the ground, into good soil that could nourish them. What I was there for was to make sure that they were upright and unbent after a particularly vigorous rainstorm. What I was there for was to water them when the rain did not fall. What I was there for was to weed and check on their well-being. What I was there for was to make sure that their fruits did not go to waste. What I was there for was to ensure that the pests did not get to them before I could. What I was there was to make sure that they were healthy, that the insects didn't eat at the leaves way too much, that at the end of the day, they could live to grow again somewhere else. They could live to nourish someone other than myself. As much as I played the role of steward, I would also say that this was a creative process. I was improvising, adapting to circumstances, coming up with solutions to problems that came up. And I think that in itself is such an interesting learning process for a creative person. The fact is, in some form, I failed. My cucumbers never even had a fighting chance to begin with. My tomatoes were miserable. They never even fruited. And my pepper harvest was lackluster, to say the least. But the aubergines, they thrived. So amidst that trying and failing, something stuck. I think it's so important, looking from that lens, to regard the way that we approach ideas that come to us, experiments we want to try, if it's a piece of fiction or nonfiction that we want to write, an essay that we want to try our hand at, a bit of poetry or song that we want to create out of nothing. It's really interesting to regard these processes, both as creative processes, but also as processes of stewardship. When the idea comes, if you don't write it down or try something with it or think past the initial idea, if you don't steward it, protect it, help it make its first leaps into life, it departs from you. Like an abandoned garden, it falls to the weeds, it falls to nothing. This was a humbling process. I am the originator, but I am not the originator. The ideas feed me, and I feed them. I feed the garden feeds me.